The story of Egypt's first intermediate period unfolds like the shifting sands along the Nile, slow at first, the subtle signs almost invisible, until, suddenly, entire landscapes are transformed. To understand how the world's first great civilization teetered on the brink of collapse, we begin at the apex, the Old Kingdom, an age whose very stones still whisper the glories of a united and thriving Egypt. For nearly 5 centuries, Egypt prospered. Born upon the unending annual inundations of the Nile, its fields spilled forth grain, its priests appeased the gods, and its kings, pharaohs, living gods upon earth, reigned supreme from their palatial citadels. The pyramids of Giza, towering and eternal, spoke of an order unshakable. Pharaoh was not merely king. He was the axis around which the universe turned. His will bent the cosmos. But even the most enduring reigns are mortal, and the seeds of Egypt's undoing were sown in its own success. As we peer into the latter days of the Old Kingdom, we find the aged figure of Pepi II. Ascending the throne as a boy, he witnessed almost a full century of shifting generations, ruling perhaps the longest of any monarch in human history. Yet, longevity bred weakness. Pepi saw the deaths of many heirs. Succession became confused, lines of authority blurred. Worse still, the pharaoh's reliance on lieutenants, regional governors called nomarchs, grew. Tasked with governing far-flung provinces, these men soon transformed their appointments into hereditary fiefdoms. They amassed wealth, recruited retainers, and raised armies. Ostensibly loyal to Memphis, the pharaoh's palace, they more often acted like independent princes behind the facade of unity. While Pepi II still lived, the old rituals continued. But the centripetal forces once holding Egypt together weakened year by year. When Pepi II finally passed from the world, Egypt found itself adrift. The ancient thread binding king and cosmos had frayed. Cairo's chronologies record the turbulent 7th and 8th dynasties as a time of dizzying instability. Some later historians, reaching for words to convey the scale of disintegration, lamented that 70 kings ruled for 70 days. It is hyperbole, but the underlying truth is clear. The throne of Horus was no longer unassailable. Egypt's unity shattered. The realm broke apart. Compounding the crisis of leadership, nature itself dealt a cruel blow. In the decades that followed Pepi II's demise, the world's climate shifted. Drought gripped northeast Africa. The Nile, lifeblood of Egypt, failed to rise as it had always done. Without the river's annual flood, rich black earth turned to dust. Crops withered, hunger stalked the land. Inscriptions from this period echo with desperation. Towns abandoned, children hungry, families forced to leave ancestral homes in search of survival. The old compact between king, people, and gods seemed irreparably sundered. So Egypt fractured. The strong-boned architecture of the Old Kingdom crumbled into a patchwork of small, competing territories, each led by a kinglet or ambitious nomarch. What began as an existential crisis began to harden along new lines of power. By 2130 BCE, 2 formidable rival centers emerged. In Lower Egypt, the northern delta, the city of Heracleopolis proclaimed itself the rightful seat of Pharaoh. Its rulers, the 9th and then 10th dynasties, threaded their legitimacy through ancient lines, heirs in name if not in fact to the glories of the Old Kingdom. To the south in Upper Egypt, meanwhile, Thebes rose from obscurity, energized by the drive of a warlike and ambitious family. For decades, the contest was far from settled. The Heracleopolitan kings, fortified by fertile fields and ancient temples, controlled the rich lands of the delta. Their grip was tightest in the city of Asyut, a provincial stronghold on the shifting border between north and south. Here, the nomarchs became legends in their own right, warrior princes whose tombs still boast of battles fought, alliances forged, and faith maintained toward their northern overlords. These lords commanded armies, raised fortresses, and checked every Theban incursion. The southern upstarts, meanwhile, were no less determined. The drama of Egypt's civil war is best understood through the saga of the Intef family at Thebes. Intef, once merely a provincial governor, gathered local support and began carving out an independent domain in Upper Egypt. His son, Intef, would go farther, declaring himself king of all Egypt, at first largely a claim of ambition, but soon a statement of intent, backed by marching armies. By extending his authority to the religious hub of Abydos, Intef II challenged Heracleopolitan rule directly, vying not only for power, but also for the god's blessing and the people's loyalty. The war that followed was protracted and brutal. Cities and towns changed masters again and again. Local governors weighed their options carefully. Allegiance to Thebes or to Heracleopolis often meant life or death for their people. Some shifted sides with the winds of war, others dug in and fought savagely for ideology or for advantage. This was no simple North versus South affair, but a chaotic struggle of shifting alliances, religious rivalries, and straight-out power grabs. The combat was as much psychological and spiritual as it was physical. Both dynasties sought to sanctify their claims, commissioning priests and scribes to pen their legitimacy, sponsoring festivals, and invoking long-forgotten gods in hope of support. Eventually, the pendulum of war began to swing unmistakably toward Thebes. The critical turning point came in the reign of Mentuhotep II, grandson of Intef. The Heracleopolitans had made a grievous mistake. Pushing southward, they desecrated Abydos, the most venerated of Middle Egypt's necropolises, a site believed to be the entrance to the land of the dead. This act was not just a political affront, but a cosmic sacrilege. Mentuhotep II seized upon it, turning grief into fury, and roused his people for total war. The evidence of these bitter struggles lies not only in written accounts, but beneath the very sands themselves. In a tomb at Deir el-Bahari, archaeologists discovered a grim testament: the mummified, linen-wrapped bodies of 60 soldiers, Theban warriors who fell in Mentuhotep's campaigns. Their cause was writ large upon their shrouds, sealed with the pharaoh's own cartouche. Here are the silent witnesses to a forgotten violence, long since overtaken by the sweep of later, more celebrated histories. In the closing acts of this epic, Mentuhotep II led his forces decisively north. One by one, the Heracleopolitan buffer states were broken. Asyut, once the bulwark of the north, fell to Theban swords. The armies of the Delta, battered and demoralized, offered only token resistance. In a climactic confrontation at Abydos, the last defenders of Heracleopolis were crushed. At last, after nearly a century of chaos, Egypt was united, though beneath the lotus and the reed it bore new and indelible scars. The conclusion of civil war did not mark a return to the old order. It forged a new one. Mentuhotep II, though victor, saw clearly the weakness that had nearly destroyed his land. Many of the structures of the old kingdom were swept aside. Power was centralized at Thebes, now the new capital, and the system of nomarchs was brought to heel through the appointment of loyal officials who watched the provinces with a wary eye. The standing army, once an ad hoc gathering of provincial militias, was professionalized to ensure that no governor could again challenge the pharaoh's will so easily. Nor were the changes solely political. The scars of war and famine drove Egyptians to reconsider old truths. Social mobility emerged. Scribes, artisans, and tradespeople found opportunity where before birth had been destiny. Religious life, too, transformed. Once, the splendor of the afterlife had been reserved for kings. Now, in new writings, like the coffin texts, even ordinary people could hope to survive death, journeying to the field of reeds alongside the mightiest of monarchs. Tombs for commoners became ever more elaborate, filled with prayers, spells, and painted scenes. Old boundaries, both of class and spirit, loosened and shifted. What arose from the ashes and bloodshed was the Middle Kingdom, an age of renewed creativity, artistry, and prosperity. The pharaohs who followed Mentuhotep II would build anew temples, canals, and literature. Their monuments spoke not just of victory, but of lessons learned from the darkness that had nearly swept them away. Yet even as Egypt flourished once more, the shadow of its civil war lingered. The memory of division haunted poets and priests alike, a warning etched in every temple wall and scribe's roll. The innovations born of necessity, centralized government, standing armies, broader social freedom, became the cornerstones of a more durable civilization. The first intermediate period is often obscured by the golden glow of the Old and New Kingdoms. Yet, in that long crisis, Egypt was remade. Its people discovered their own resilience and adaptability. They confronted the failure of their ancient certainties and emerged stronger for it. In the end, Egypt did what few civilizations manage. It weathered both the storm of war and the famine of plenty, forging new paths where old ones had crumbled. So when one stands in the shadow of Egypt's pyramids or gazes upon the treasures of its tombs, it is easy to be dazzled by surface splendor. But beneath every gold mask and every hieroglyph, there lies the story of struggle, survival, and reinvention, a nation's rebirth from the crucible of its darkest hour. The first intermediate period may not be a tale of easy heroes and villains, but it is a story of the extraordinary capacity of a people to endure, adapt, and shape their destiny in the face of chaos.